is Yvonne Wakefield, and I'm going to continue reading from the first book in my 3-book series, Babe in the Woods, Building a Life, One Log at a Time. The other books are Babe in the Woods, Self-Portrait, and the recently released Babe in the Woods, Path of Totality. So last chapter 8, I read about actually doing my first day of work up on a snowy hillside under the tutelage and mentorship of Jim, the man I hired to help me, who actually taught me everything I know about building log cabins and a lot more. So chapter 9 we're going to get into is called My Little Black Dress. And it's an introduction about how I came to find my most beloved tool I used in building the log cabin. So, chapter 9, Little Black Dress. I can't hold it any longer, I yell, a mantra that flows out of me each time I use Jim's saw to try and cut down a tree. Get a chainsaw you can use yourself, Jim yells back over the roar that takes the saw from me and cuts the engine. They make them smaller than the one I got here. Jim nods at his still, sets it on wet ground after another of my failed attempts to cut with it. We've both been working together for a week, and he has allowed me the opportunity to try his saw each time we meet. Now he realizes his machine is too much for me. What he doesn't understand is that each time I try to cut a tree, I feel it scream back at me. In Mount Vernon, just to the west of John Day, I buy a used McCullough from a man with a saccharine voice by the name of Lemon. It's an apt last name because the guy sells me a banged up yellow casing with a 30-inch bar that weighs nearly as much as my loaded backpack. I settle with Mr. Lemon and then lug that saw up and over 2 miles of melting snow and mud. At the building site, just as Jim taught me, I clear the area of any debris that whirling chain could fling back at me, then set the saw down. I squeeze the throttle 7 times, pull out the choke, and place my left foot on the inside of the handle and pull a bull-headed cord, refusing to unfurl the start. I pull and yank and pull, working up a sweat, trying to spark the engine until the cord snaps back hard as the casing bruising my knuckles. I reposition my foot on the handle, push in the choke, pull it out, and finger that throttle 6 times. I repeat, throttle 5, pull and pull, throttle 4 times, pull and pull again and again until my affinity for the bow saw rekindles. Finally, that beast coughs, gasps, and roars. I push in the choke, and the McCullough snorts to life. I stand straight, legs spread wide, braced for the kickback, just like Jim taught me, head to one side of the bar. The chain merely glances a wound in the bark and bounces off. I lift the saw again and level the bar at the correct undercut angle again and again until finally the teeth bite in. Sawdust flies and the chain draws deeper. My arms shake from exertion and vibration, my spirit from exaltation. Finally, I am cutting through bark, blood rushing so hard in my head the sound drowns out the shrieking tree. As if on cue, the carburetor coughs and belches blue smoke. Then the son of a bitch dies. Carburetor is all choked up. Cheaper to replace it than fix it. That's what the guy at John Day Rigging says when I bring in the stupid saw 2 days later. It would cost about as much to overhaul it as I paid for it. That saw was like a bad relationship, broken from the start. As much as I wanted things to work out between us, I knew that McCullough and I would never click. It was not as difficult to get my money back from an honest man as it was to get someone to understand a letter that ends with, "Leave me alone." The mayor of Prairie City, and that's a little town just east of John Day, the mayor of Prairie City lives in a house on Main Street, 13 miles, I just said it, east of John Day. Timber Beast is painted on a board nailed to the garage where the civic-minded logger runs the town and a saw shop. Ever used one before? The mayor chainsaw purveyor eyes me suspiciously as I practice cutting figure eights in the air with a saw I picked off a shelf in his office garage showroom. The vroom, vroom, vroom is coming from my throat, not the motor. I can't figure it out if it's the stitches in my eye, between my eyes, or my ghost sawing that makes him stare. He's just introduced me to an Echo, painted safety orange with a 24-inch bar. This becomes my little black dress of chainsaws. We are a perfect fit. Before we seal the deal, the mayor checks me out. I got some logs in the back. I want to be sure you can handle that before I sell it to you. The mayor gasses up the saw and I follow him, slightly bent to the side by the weight of the Echo I carry. At a demonstration log, I split my stance, bar to one side, and rip vertically straight through, leaving fine sawdust tailings. The mayor throws in a grease gun, a file, a raker, and a gallon of mixed gas for no extra charge. You just be real careful with that. I write out a check for $230 to Timber Beast. A foot locker in the bed of my Gremlin, remember the little car, is filled with food, dried clothes, and books, all of which I empty out into the back seat. I place the battered metal trunk on the ground and then tie a rope to one of its frayed leather handles. I pull the Echo inside, put the Echo inside, next to the gas can, the nozzle sticking out of the semi-closed lid, and drag that trunk behind me. It bumps, twists, and gets stuck on muddy stretches of road, but glides through the meadow leading to the bridge. Here I open the trunk, remove the contents, and balance over whitewater, gas can in one hand, chainsaw in the other. For the first time since I moved into the old cabin, cutting firewood is a breeze. The bow saw is neglected to a rusty nail on the wall. From the same flea market where I purchased an axe and now retired bow saw, I buy a draw knife. There is an ink drawing of this tool in my book, along with illustrations of other hand tools, and throughout the course of building, I will acquire many of them. At this point, I have an axe, hatchet, claw hammer, and draw knife. The chainsaw substitutes for the picture of the one-man crosscut saw. In the process of scoring various hardware and antique stores, flea markets, and garage sales, I will acquire a peavey, which the book calls a cant hook, along with a chisel, plumb bob, level, adze, crowbar, pry bar, sledgehammer, hacksaw, froe for splitting shakes that I never use, post hole digger, pickaxe, chalk line, chisels, wraps, file, and concave whetstone. For work with cut lumber, I will buy other hand tools used to lay floors, cut rafters, plane boards, level window sills, and more. But they aren't pictured in the books. Until the trees are felled, limbed, and skimmed, the axe, draw knife, and chainsaw are about all I need. I also buy a pair of leather work gloves because the local True Value carries them extra small. A few mornings after the Echo came into my life, I lay wood for a fire and fill buckets from the creek. This simplifies matter of heating wash water after returning to the old cabin when I am bone tired from work. The day before, Jim felled 16 pine and fir, and I will need plenty of hot water to scrub the pitch after a day of limbing. By mid-morning, the sun is bright enough to warm my axe blade. Except for a few mounds shaded by trees, most of this thick snow cover has melted, and little brown and gray birds are shocked by the sun into singing. An invisible, meaty magpie chimes in twice. It is warm enough to work in only sleeve shirts and without gloves. Still, I weld a new pair to keep my fingers from gluing together with pitch. Even though the sky above is clear, I burst out with, "I've looked at clouds from both sides now." In 1 week, my confidence at limbing has blossomed. My ability to carry a tune is not. Swinging a double-blade poleaxe with strength and accuracy, I enter my superwoman of the piney woods zone. Wailing away with poetic licensing, pitch pockets burst and branches fall away. Fast, It's love's illusions I recall. God damn it, I screamed so loud the aspens squeak. On a downswing, my right hand has wedged between the axe handle and the tree trunk. A rosy glow wicks up to the surface above my index finger. Gingerly, I pull off the bloody glove, take one look at the exposed knuckle bone, and faint, belly first, over the tree I'd been limbing. A teeny caldera below my limp hand focuses in and out of my consciousness I try to regain. Once I am awake and steady again, I take another look. Blood percolates up from a skin flap peeled back to expose knuckle bone, a sight that sends me less than upright again. I look around for help. There is an axe, a draw knife, and the bloody glove. When I hear a chainsaw, I realize I am not alone, that Jim has come to work later than usual, and he is somewhere in the woods. Yoo-hoo, I yell, which is greeted by, "Good morning, Yvonne." "Over here," I reply. Chainsaw in one hand, axe in the other, Jim tracks my voice to find me sitting on a log and says, "You're looking a little pale." I show him my finger. "Take the rest of the day off, boss. I'll finish up here." We agree to meet back at the building site in 3 days. "Don't worry about these." Jim sets my axe and draw knife on the log, covering them with pine boughs so I can easily find them again. I walk empty-handed down to the old cabin, throbbing hand over my heart. The night before, I tried cutting the stitches out of my forehead. The procedure left me cross-eyed and the stitches still tied tight. The tweezers and toenail clippers from my aborted surgery attempt are still soaking in a shallow pan of water on the stove. Even with a half-useless hand, it is easy to light a fire already laid, to reheat the water enough to partially sterilize those surgical instruments. While the water heats, I dip the injured finger in and out, sluicing away dried blood until the skin flaps freely. I squeeze and squeeze again to make a loose fist, assuring myself the finger isn't broken. Then tweeze the skin over the exposed knuckle and hold it down, crisscross with 2 Curades. I dilute and heat some condensed milk, down it with 2 aspirins, and go to bed, giving my dark universe a throbbing finger. Not much you can do for it after 12 hours except to tape it. The same Marlboro medic I'd seen nearly 2 weeks ago holds my hand, palpating it, probing the swollen flesh above my purple knuckle. He swabs the wound with antibiotic cream, crosses it with freshly surgical tape, and wraps it in gauze, then shoves an aluminum splint over the mummified finger, anchors it to the base with more tape. Keep it from bending, give that skin a chance to heal. The doctor places my hand on my lap, and then he steps back to examine my stitches. "You might have a teeny bit of scar, but it only looked like you're frowning." With the same forceps he used on my finger, the doctor plucks out the stitches in my forehead. They plink like broken eyelashes into a stainless steel tray. I walk down the hallway to pay my bill, then head to the only place in town where I'm known on a first-name basis, even though it's mispronounced. "Hi, Yvonne." Emery nods as I take a counter seat. He places an empty mug in front of me and then fills it with coffee. I add cream and sugar, and with the good hand, careful to keep the bandaged one on my lap. "Same?" he asks. "Yep." I reply, and 2 fritters appear on a plate. I chew in silence, mindful of how free my forehead feels. Only men sit at the counter, drinking coffee, some smoking at this between lunch and dinner hour. They wear clothes smelling and looking like their work, like they stare at the same plate in front of them or down on the counter or blankly ahead. The wall clock ticks. Spoons tink, tink. "What'll it be?" or "top you off." Emery tends the counter line, his smoky voice breaking the tired silence. My clothes smell like my work as my mind busies itself on logs left to buck, limb, and skim. Like me, the men at this counter are minding their thoughts of things left to tend. Barbed wire fences need to be strung, a culvert ditch to funnel more spring runoff yet to come. Cattle range hungrily below snow-capped Strawberry Mountain. There's a ton of hay in the lowland sheet metal shelters. The problem is getting it to the herd because the tractor is broken. Or a garage mechanic sick of grease has abandoned a busted axle or radiator in the process of replacing it. A few stools down, a mill worker is on break, seeking a change in venue, his job pulling green chain, and even lonelier outlook than this crew. We don't come to Emery's for the weak coffee, but for the strength of company we keep in the words we don't speak. Stories told in stooped backs and crusty fingernails. There are no Mormons here. They are busy at work. The tick-tock, tink-tink grunts, phlegmy coughs here and there, sighs of cigarette smoke exhaled, sounds of comrie and needed respite, sawdust, grease, some form of work traces every check handed back to Emery. No one on this counter is focused on love's illusions. This kind of thinking goes on tap after sunset at the roundup if these guys are still awake. Not at Emery's in the afternoon. Well, that was chapter 9, and I just want to give you a little factoid here. When I smashed my finger like nearly half a century ago, like 10 years ago, the damage was so bad the fingernail will continually break. And I've actually heard this from other loggers. Like when you smash a knuckle, it'll take decades for that injury to appear, and it will be like a fingernail that'll continually crack. Maybe that's too much information, but if you ever hit yourself with a hammer when you're 18, when you're 60, you might see it. So again, thank you for listening to Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time. This is Yvonne Wakefield, and her channel is Yvonne Wakefield YouTube channel. We will see you next week. Tell your friends about this great story. Ask them to subscribe. I also have a great website, YvonnePepin-Wakefield.com, where you can see examples of my artists, because besides building log cabins, I am an artist. See you next week. Remember, stay hydrated, and bye-bye.